Hey, Chad Littlefield here, co-founder and chief experience officer at We and Me, and I'm coming to you now with the intention of sharing a live moment that I just facilitated the opening to day 2 of a virtual conference that I'm sort of emceeing and facilitating virtual and remote engagement throughout. And so we're kicking off with an exercise around their theme, which is transforming together. And there's a number of creative ways I do that, and I thought they might be useful for you. So feel free to ruthlessly misinterpret what you watch in the next few minutes and apply it to your own context. If you'd love more free tips, tools, ideas to make connection and engagement easy in a remote virtual context, feel free to check out our link right over here somewhere around how to make connection and engagement easy, both online and in person at weand.me/ideas. Without further ado, here is our opening exercise that accesses our mirror neurons, our empathy neurons, and makes this group's theme about transforming together come alive. So for those of you who saw the video, the shirt was not CGI. I wore my space shirt to celebrate the fact that we're in cyberspace together again today. It's a miracle that we were all able to teleport in, even with link troubles and Wi-Fi things and stuff like that. It's still amazing that we're all here. So glad to be with you. What I'd love to do is just ask, hey Google, what is the definition of transform?
Here's the definition of transform. Make a thorough or dramatic change in the form, appearance, or character of.
Define together.
Here's the definition of together. With or in proximity to another person or people.
Interesting. So dramatic change with or in proximity to people. So at least we're in very close proximity to people. You all are like about 1 millimeter away from each other, separated by a thin little black line. And so what I'd love to do is to visually represent some of that dramatic change. So starting right now, I would love for you to mirror everything that I'm doing. So even as I'm talking, you may have noticed when I talk, I move my hands a lot. Yes, Elizabeth, very nice. And sometimes in the morning, it's good to just like get a little bit of a stretch and make sure that spinal cord is feeling loose and ready to go. And if you're in a place maybe where you're have the ability to kind of like shift over to the right of your screen and shift over to the left of your screen, and we'll see how flexible people's spaces are and who's standing. If you can disappear. Some of you are like, yeah, that's not happening. And so maybe smash your hand up to the camera and rotate it all the way around. Oh my goodness. Whew. And then one more hand. Okay. Whew. Wouldn't it be really convenient if we could create like massive cultural change and knowledge shifts in an organization in like 30 seconds by all just mirroring each other? Now, the reason I wanted to start off with that, how many of you, just by a quick show of hands, have heard of the Angelo effect, the Michelangelo effect? Oh, this is so good. This is like my favorite Psych 101 learning. So the Michelangelo effect is, they've done studies where couples that spend lots of time together, like years and years and years, actually over time start to look more similar to each other because they have so many shared experiences that their facial muscles actually start to strengthen and structure in a certain way. I'm not sure if that's the same reason that people look like their dogs sometimes too, but maybe there's something to that. And so thinking about this idea of transforming together, I think one of the things that allowed us just playfully in this moment to transform together is the ability to connect, right? And connect is a very big word. And what I'd love to do right now is break it down into some nuance, because I think there's a lot of wisdom embedded in the nuance of words and phrases that we use pretty freeingly. Right, so the word connect, we've all said it a billion times. I want to break it down and add this phrase. And I told you yesterday that I'd unpack this phrase, connection before content. And if you want to take notes, this might be really useful to have. So the idea of connection before content is not an icebreaker. It's not some fun thing to like go around the circle in your district and have everybody answer what color Skittle they would be if they were Skittle, right? Connection before content goes much deeper than that and it has three main ingredients that make it connection before content. And if you don't meet all three of these ingredients, I would say you're doing something, but it's not connection before content. Right, so the first ingredient, maybe the most obvious one, is it has to connect people to each other. Right, so if you have an amazing video of a cat that's funny and relates to the theme of the topic of the session that you're leading with a client, interesting, not connection before content though, right? It doesn't connect people to each other. The second one, and this is where most connection activities or icebreakers almost always miss, is that it connects to the purpose of why you are there. Right? Like, sure, there's value in just simply connecting, but great connection before content also connects to why you are actually there. And then the third one, it creates choice for authenticity and vulnerability. So cannot and should not force it, right? Because authenticity and vulnerability is very different for very different people. But at least creates the opportunity for authenticity and vulnerability. And the easiest way to check that third box is something that invites people to tell a story that's true for them. They get to choose what story, right? Because we all are hanging out, sitting here with a lifetime of ungoogleable experience in this filing cabinet of things that we can pull out. And so when we invite stories forward, people get to choose what stories they share. They're really memorable, and they help connect us to that person. So the reason I wanted to frame up connection before content is for our time today. One, I could probably just my Wi-Fi could cut out, and that would hopefully be useful enough for you, and you'd be able to ruthlessly interpret that, and perhaps transform some of your sessions and conversations with clients in a really meaningful way. But one of the ways that we're going to spend our time today is you've all got this little box of We Connect cards. And so I am a firm believer that Bill Nye the Science Guy is a fairly smart human being. And his words here, the idea that everyone you will ever meet knows something you don't. And so I could just share a list of ways that you could use these cards in a remote context and in a in-person context that you could take and adapt. But I believe that every one of you knows something that I don't, even though I created the deck and get to use it with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of organizations and thousands of people, right? I've learned lots through failure of how to use them, but I would love to first harvest the collective knowledge in the group. Like if this tool just showed up at your doorstep with no other context, how might you use it or make use of it with your clients to support and create that connection before content? And so we're going to ponder that question solo first, and then we're going to split out into breakouts to have a quick conversation before we come back and harvest some collective knowledge, and then I'll drop some nuggets as well. We'll popcorn out some responses, and maybe I'll just add some butter to the popcorn, I guess. But before we do that, I want to just speak to 2 minutes of why. Why in the world, when you have heaps of content, ideas, things to unpack, big, complex things to unpack with clients, why invest the 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes in connecting before content? And to unpack that why, I'm going to defer to Eric Mazur, who's a physicist at Harvard. So for any of you who are a little bit more data driven and you're let's really why? What's the research behind this? Not just your opinion, Chad. So Eric Mazur is a physicist at Harvard. And so maybe not in the touchy-feely category so much, right? And Eric's, to some degree, quit his day job, and he travels around doing faculty development in universities. And one of the only slides that he'll pop up and share is a picture of 9 EEG graphs, EEG electroencephalogram. It's like the brain net or the hair net that goes over your brain to measure brain activity. And he puts up these 9 EEG graphs in order from most activity to least activity. And he goes through them and shares what they are. And so the items at the top of that list are things like movement, right? So exercise, right? There's lots of blood flow, blood's getting to the brain. There's research that like even when we stand up, just every half hour, like our learning and retention goes up, right? So things that involve movement. Part of my intention for starting off with a little bit of movement this morning. As you go down through the graph, it's things that you might expect. So, reading, right, is a little bit more relaxed, but you're still kind of thinking and engaging. Number 8 is sleeping. Number 9 is attending a university lecture. And he puts this slide up for during faculty development. He says, this is probably going to make you really mad. And then he unpacks a bunch of ways to break that dynamic. So one of the top ways that really activates people's brains is that social connection, right? There's the social accountability, like psychologically, they've done a bunch of research. When somebody's on a run, they run faster when they're around people. So you're like running through a neighborhood and then you get to the downtown area. You actually pick up your speed, not totally consciously, but you're like, okay, people are watching. Like it's time to elevate my performance in that way. And connection before content has the ability, when done well, has the ability to elevate people's learning, performance, curiosity, engagement. And so for me, that's one of many, 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 many reasons why it's worth spending 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes on connection before content before diving into the agenda or the flow that you've got.